How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 and $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and today we're welcoming the incredible Hakim Isler. Hakim, aka the Black MacGuyver. When I started this podcast, I wanted to reach out to men and women with different backgrounds, whether it's military, law enforcement, martial arts, survival, people in leadership roles, and deal with mental health and philanthropy work. And when I kind of came across your work on Naked and Afraid, I was like, man, who is this guy? And we've had EJ Snyder on the show. I've had Donnie Dust, so I'm very well versed in really good survivalists. Uh, and I was like, I gotta dig further here because there's something about this guy. You literally cross off every category, uh, all the way down to some incredible philanthropy work. Combat veteran, author of 2 incredible books, martial artist, survivalist. Man, Hakeem, it is awesome to have you on here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
And to kind of, I know the last year and a half has been crazy for everyone, and you have a studio gym, Elevo Dynamics. Now, obviously, you were affected with the shutdown, but as people have started to come back, what is some of the stuff you've seen, whether it's physically or mentally, that has changed from the last time you saw some of these people?
So we were a little bit different in the sense that we weren't really shut down for long. We started the Zoom classes like a lot of people did, but very early on, about 2 months in, we were able to kind of open back up. And we saw a lot of our folks. We did have some folks that were a little nervous about, the coronavirus who didn't come, but we're in a very mostly military town. So a lot of people here are very hard charging type individuals. So those people were still going out and doing stuff. And so it didn't affect us as much as, I had expected it to. It did, but it wasn't as bad as, some friends of mine who own schools. They had lost like 70 or 80% of their clientele, and that's huge. And we lost some people again, maybe like 40% or 30% of our clientele. But we still were doing better than most.
And you mentioned the being in the military town, but for you, when this first kind of kicked off, and say before the pandemic, when you're having a bad day, whether physically or mentally, how do you kind of get out of that funk? Kind of like the funk that not only myself, but millions of other people were in the last year and a half.
So I go through a regimen every morning where I do some yoga and some breath work. And I do some, and I walk every morning, get some outside time. And I have some affirmations that I say every day while I'm doing that walk. And that really helps keep me balanced. But I still have those days where something's just off, and I can't pinpoint what it is. Maybe it's my diet for the night before, or maybe it's I don't have enough water, but something's off. And the way I normally deal with that when I have those days is that I try to just spend a lot of time outside, getting some fresh air, staying off of technology, anything that stimulates me in a way that I'm not able to be very mindful of what's happening. And, Facebook and Instagram and these things can kind of steer you in the wrong direction and keep you from and get you more anxious. And so one of the things that I think people are not used to, which is very evident right now, is the ability to have self-care, to care for themselves. There's people can be physically fit, or they can do like sports, but self-care goes so much deeper than that. And so being able to really sit down and be with yourself mentally and emotionally is something that I suggest for a lot of people. And so what we started doing in our classes is I started taking some of the breath work from my yoga and my ninja training and started incorporating them more in our classes, where we really sit down and we really start thinking about controlling our breathing, thinking, thinking about our thoughts, which is really funny to say, talking about, vocalizing, the positive, and speaking a positive truth into your life versus a negative truth. And I've seen that that's helped a lot of people. So
When you mentioned like the breath work and the yoga, is this something as you got older in your life after the military that you kind of realized, had I done this type of stuff during the military through the martial arts, that I would be better off? Because as a I'm 36, and I remember going to high school, and not to anything against yoga or the guys that did dance or this other Tai Chi type stuff, but I just never did that. I was, if you get hurt, drink some water, rub some dirt in it, whatever. But as I get older and I'm doing security work, I'm like, man, I should have stretched better before I started today, or I really do need to drink this water as much as I hate it. And like stuff like that, like how did you finally come to a realization that this is all basic stuff that guy, girl, old, young, doesn't matter who you are, this is all stuff we should all be doing?
so yeah, I think we have a very physical culture, but we also we don't spend a lot of time really understanding the unified mind, body, spirit system. It's very surface.
Yes.
And so what ends up happening is that we kind of reward this idea of driving on. The military is the same way, pushing through, driving on, not really taking time to take care of yourself. And what we're finding is that, after living in a culture of that so long, you start breaking down. And then once you start breaking down, you start saying to yourself, well, how do I fix this? And so for me, I was very cerebral and did a lot of things, but I really didn't dive into the depth, very, very deep into where I am now. And I think that's just, again, that's time. We have a young body, and that's a phase that you go through. When you have this young body and you're able to do all of these things, and you always want to push the envelope, that's part of being young, and unfortunately, I don't know how many of the older generation in my particular experience could really tell me how to deal with breath work and meditation and things of that nature. So because no one could really explain that or tell me why that was important, but everybody can tell me why running fast is important, or
Right.
picking up a ball, or being able to go, have strong drive where you go get some stuff. So that's what you see. You see that in our society. But when we start to get older and we realize that other people's opinions and the way we were living isn't going to be sustainable in the long run, in the sense that you start having things happen. For me, it was my lower back. So what really got me into yoga is that I was just like, my back got to the point where I was like, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to do martial arts much
Oh,
longer. I'm waking up in the morning, I'm lying down and I'm in pain. I get up and I sit on the edge of the bed and I'm in pain. It takes me almost an hour before I can get out of bed, stand up, and then start moving, because my back is so wrecked. And then when I'm moving, I'm uncomfortable. So I go and sit down immediately. And that's the only thing that kind of gives me some comfort. And then now I'm sitting all day. So I'm like, man, something's wrong. And so I went on this journey to kind of figure it out. And so I really did some real research on yoga, not very surface, not just find the first commercial school out there.
right.
And then I started going to school for herbal medicine. And so I was like, I don't want to do what the VA is 100% telling me, which is, hey, here's some
Take
drugs,
the
and
pills.
here's some more drugs, and here's some other drugs. And oh, you feeling this way? Here's a drug for that. And I mean, literally, don't get me wrong, medication can work. And there are some people who need medication. Um, but I think our system is just so plug and play. Everybody's the same. My personal experience was I went in and I got a drug for my back, my lower back pain, and that started messing with my stomach. And so then they gave me a drug to counteract that. and that those drugs for my stomach started messing with my sleep patterns. So then they gave me a drug for sleep, and then that started giving me migraines. So then they gave me a drug for migraine. So I mean, this is my reality: is that I end up going in for, man, my back's really hurting, and the next thing I know, I'm on 5 or 6 drugs. And I was like, this can't be an answer. So in my personal life, I'm happy to say that through meditation and breath work and yoga, as well as my herbology, I've been able to to deal with all of that, and I'm in really good condition now.
It's cool that you brought up the VA stuff because my CEO is a retired Marine, and he goes to the VA for different stuff, and like you said, before it'd always be take a pill for this issue, and then take a pill to cover this, so it's just a never-ending circle like you discussed, and he basically said, "Hey, I'll get what I need if there's something I actually need for my health, something I can't do, but the same medication you're giving me, I could walk out with a horse, take the horse out of the paddocks and ride the horse, or I could go for a walk or do something outside, cut the grass by myself on a tractor where I'm getting the same stuff I'm supposed to be getting as opposed to just getting fed this big pharma, take this, take this, take this." And so, kind of like a follow-up question to you, obviously you know a ton of people that went through the VA and myself working with different people. Do you think there should be a push for kind of like this other stuff where it's like, hey, you might need to take medication for certain stuff or get a procedure that you need a doctor for, but yoga and breathing and just eating healthy can alleviate a lot of these problems. Do you think that should be a push that they should go for?
Yeah, I think so, and I think they've been trying, but I don't think there are enough people in the system that really understand it. So you have if I go to become a medical doctor, and I understand medication and pharmacology, then that's what I'm going to rely on. So, but then you start talking about this breath work and all this other stuff, and I don't really understand that, then I'm not going to really recommend that. So, the more people we can get into the system that really understand how these things work, because breath work is a science. Yeah, I can tell you to breathe all day. Calm down, breathe, John. Just breathe, just breathe. Yeah, but okay, well, I am breathing. I'm just breathing really rapidly because I'm having a panic attack, right? But breathe, just breathe. I am breathing. So, but let's talk about, well, how do you breathe? Where should you breathe in your body? What you should be thinking about? What is it doing in your system? And now we really have a science, and that science is something that people can believe in, versus just saying, oh, yeah, all you got to do is just sit down and breathe, which is not something that a lot of people can just believe in. And therefore, without belief, without know-how and without belief and being able to explain that what's happening to people, then there's no faith in it. And without the faith, then nobody's going to use it. And so I think that a lot of people there's just not enough people who understand those realms in the system to really make it commonplace in the system.
Right. As a Army veteran, what led you to join the military? Was you growing up were you always active, wanting to serve others? Like, how do you kind of end up becoming a Army veteran? Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom. Like, what led you to do that, choose that career path?
So I never really saw myself as a military person, but I've always been in the martial arts. So I've been in the martial arts since I was 8, and I'm 44 now, and so I've done all these different martial arts. I've done sports my whole life, and when I moved to Ohio to train with my teacher Stephen Hayes as a a
Gotcha.
ninja practitioner.
Yep.
Um, I started learning all of this depth of knowledge, and I already had a very cerebral mind. I had a very weird background where I spent time with, what the cliche thug would be called in movies or whatever. So I had a lot of friends that were thugs, but I had a lot of people who weren't thugs neither. So I was always very middle ground. And and in some ways balanced, I guess. And I moved to Ohio and I started training in the system. And very early on, I started recognizing that I had the spirit of like the protector, right? And that's why I didn't fall or devolve into a very non-protector, predator role as I was growing up. And as I'm going through this training, this ninja training, and learning all these skills, um, 9/11 happened, and everyone who knew me through my life said, "You have a gift for tactical proficiency, your ability to think through problems, adapt and to overcome in any genre." And I started to believe that. And so when 9/11 happened, I was like, I have something that I feel can help serve my country in a way that can, uh, you know, that can grow our ability to be successful in wherever I'm at. And so I felt it was right for me, one, to challenge myself to gain new skills and new knowledge, but to use the knowledge and skills that I already had to empower my country. And that was what I did. And I joined the army because of that. And it was scary. A lot of people said, "Don't do it. It's not. It's you could not come back," and all of the things that I'm sure every parent was saying to their child, and friend that was saying to their child during that time. Most parents and friends, but I did it anyway, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, even though it was very difficult at times.
And you mentioned Stephen Hayes, who's, for anyone that doesn't really, a lot of my followers of the show actually follow martial arts, and but for those that don't, he's, I would consider the American Ninja. Uh, Legendary instructor. The fact you actually trained with him and got your black belt certification through him, but since you had that relationship with him before you enlisted and served and done all your stuff in the military, when you, as you were serving, what exactly did you pull from his training that could kind of help you get through the day?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you know, I already had an ability to adapt. I remember a friend of mine. I wrote about this in my Ninja Survival book. Um,
Which is
he
sold out
was
on Amazon right now, by the way.
yeah, it's out on Amazon right now. He was a predator. And and I remember one day, being with him in the projects, and I was trying to be like him and everybody else, where I was a tough guy, and I was like, and everybody looked at me as like the predator. And I remember him saying my nickname back then was Knowledge, and he said, "Knowledge, you're not like the rest of us. You're not like a wolf, and you're not like a sheep. You're like in between. Sheepdog, the term sheepdog was cool at the time, so he didn't say sheepdog, but he was just like, you're like in between. You're like somebody who can kind of be in both realms." And I remember how that it was annoying because I was trying to be a wolf, but the wolves weren't accepting me. But they were also not saying I was a sheep neither, you know. So I go off and I learn. So I always was an adapter, and I go off and I learn this ninja martial arts. And you had these people who were these adaptive people who were living in a very tumultuous time, who were able to blend in with the environment and become different things. And so it just kind of really fit with me well. And when I joined the army, it allowed me to do that very well, because I think you could be the hard charger, guy. You could be a person that the army eats up and spits out as well. There's a lot of people I saw going through basic and different training that just couldn't cut it. Um, but then it was something about being in between that really worked into my advantage. So I went in as psychological warfare, and the ninja were, well, psychological operations, which
Right.
essentially is psychological warfare. And the ninja was psychological warfare specialists. That's what made them very unique. And so it allowed me to kind of take what Mr. Hayes had been showing me and teaching me about the cerebral aspects of what made the ninja so successful. Um, and I was able to take those lessons and apply them real time in country in Iraq, but then also in my own growth. Being able to make connections, forge alliances, things of that nature. I mean, I wrote my book, Modern Hand to Hand Combat, which is also on Amazon, while I was in country. It was one of the ways I stayed sane. Wherever we were at, I was like, if we got downtime and they were like, hey, because sometimes it was hard to sleep, right? You're in a combat outpost and there's bombs going off and people shooting at you randomly, and sometimes you just can't sleep. So I'm sitting there with my notepad writing this thing. And I remember, as a young sergeant, I'm in here and I had, if you look at that book, I have like a lieutenant colonel that I met in country that wrote the forward, or not the forward, but wrote like a review at the end of that book. And I remember, as I look back on it now, I'm like, dude, that was crazy. Like there was, I'm sitting across from a lieutenant colonel telling him about what I'm doing and telling him about who I am. And, instead of him just shrugging me off, he was like, oh yeah, I'll take time out of my day to write this thing for you. And I found myself being able to cross those lines really well, whereas sometimes people in my position weren't able to cross those lines. It was very strict and forward. Like, hey, you're a sergeant, I'm a lieutenant colonel. We're not on the same page. But I was able to kind of blend in and operate very well in any environment.
Well, it's cool that the lieutenant colonel didn't have the ego to be like, "Who the hell is this guy?" Like, I could learn from him, and he can learn from me. This is what we're here for. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And it was very magnificent. But that's what I learned from Mr. Hayes. And I mean, just to kind of highlight who he is, he was the first American to bring the ninja martial arts. So a lot of people still don't know that ninjitsu is a thing. They think, oh, that's something in the movie. Snake Eyes movie is coming out. I know you said ninjitsu.
Yep.
It's like, no, well, it's like a real thing. Not a lot of backflips involved. Not a lot of,
Right.
it's all this really deep knowledge. And so he was the first American to bring that back to America and from Japan, go through all of those hardships so that we can learn that and grow in that knowledge. And so he is the first American ninja, the cliche movie, right?
Yeah, I love that movie too. So, as you kind of transitioned from the military to the civilian life again, in the back of your mind, obviously you have the martial arts training, but how did you kind of get to where you started doing the survival stuff? Into how are you gonna live? How are you gonna make a living now, or how are you gonna stay focused and kind of keep your mind off the horrors of war moving forward?
um, so how did I get into survival? So part of that is me spending time with Hayes on his property, and being out in the woods and us doing training and things of that nature. And then while training with him, I was able to find another soldier who actually told me about psychological operations. I didn't know there was a such thing. I was going to try to go in the Army as an 18 X-ray, which is a special forces,
Right.
designation, so that I can go through training. And there I was going to try to become like either a weapons sergeant or a demolition specialist. And then he told me about PSYOP, and I was like, what's that? And we got to talking. Well, we talked more, and he was into survival, and he lived in Colorado. So he was like, you should come down and train with me a little bit. I'll teach you some stuff and get you kind of prepared to go in. And so that's what I did. And that really kind of expanded my mind even more. And then, of course, I joined the Army. I ended up going through all the navigation training and the wilderness training. And then I ended up in SEER school. And then that was more survival training. And when I got out, I still kind of held to that. And then Naked and Afraid came up. So then I was like, okay, well, I already have this knowledge, but I need to get even deeper because I'm not going to have anything on this show. And so I need to go deeper than where I was, and started ramping up my training even more. And that really, and from there, it just took off. And I mean, the first Naked and Afraid was about 8 years ago now. And since then, survival's outdoor wilderness stuff has kind of been a thing for me. I'm still not, I mean, it's such a huge genre. I mean, you can't learn everything, but it's a life pursuit.
That's what I love about it, because, like, again, like I said, we've had EJ Snyder, we've had Donnie Dust, I've had Amber Hargrove. So I've had different people, different backgrounds, and it's every one of them has said, "Oh, we love learning from other people because we might know 10 ways to start a fire, but that person knows another way I don't know, and that's essential because it could save your life." Um, the funny thing about Naked Afraid is when I first saw it, I was like, "Dude, what is this? Like, why are these people naked? Like, they're fishing, they're yelling at each other, they're screaming, their heart rate's going up and down." And then I started watching and watching. I'm like, man, there's a lot. Like, obviously, God forbid, we're never going to have a helicopter crash in the Himalayas or whatever. But I know people who live 10 miles outside Louisiana swamps that very well could be in that situation. And it kind of blows my mind that some of the stuff you guys and girls are doing on the show on the fly is super surreal to me and just really kind of it's like a really cool show.
I think it is. It is very difficult, but it also is, like you said, it's really surreal. It really expose all your hardship, all your weaknesses. It'll expose your strengths, and it really change you. And so for me, I have this nonprofit now, and for me, it was a very clear experience my first time on the show, because it gave me an opportunity to really dive beyond the surface of my own psyche and my own spirit. And so when you're stripped of everything and it's just you in the wilderness and one other person, you can't hide from yourself anymore. And we have a lot of that going on in our society. Things are happening so fast and so rapidly in our society. It's so easy to not deal with the different trauma, with the different insecurities, with the different anxieties and fears that we have. We just keep piling more dirt on top of them. Okay, I don't want to deal with the weakness of being able to join and unite with other people, or to show love to other people. So I'm just going to bury it with more Facebook posts, or watching television, or alcohol, or going out to parties. I don't want to deal with the fact that I have some emotional trauma for something that happened to me as a kid, or maybe in the military. So I'm going to bury it with sex and hanging out and doing all these things. So it's so easy to hide in our society, being so many outlets and things that I can do. I can play video games, and I can, you know,
Drink. Oh.
invest in Bitcoin, and I can, do an Instagram channel where I'm dancing all day, and people give me a bazillion likes, and it gives me that dopamine, and I feel all good, and but I don't have to deal with who I am.
Right.
And so when that happens, your wound never really heals, your injuries never really heal. And at some point they surface and they can blow you out of the water. And I think that's what we had happen with this whole thing with the coronavirus, is that people had all these issues that they weren't healed from, or they didn't know how to handle. And now all of a sudden they can't hide as much as they used to.
Right.
And now they're unleashing themselves. That for me happened in Naked and Afraid, the first one. I thought, I'm a psyop guy. I understand the mind. I've trained with this ninja master, and then all of a sudden I'm out there and I'm hungry. So physically my body can't hide from itself. It can't actively, effectively hide from itself. I have no water. I have no other stimuli. I literally have to be with me and one other person every day and go through these hardships. And I couldn't suppress all those different emotions, and they just started flooding me. And I was like, this is a real experience, and one that I need more of, and one that I need to help other people reach, which is why I started the nonprofit. So.
And I do want to talk about that in a little bit. One of the cool things, your YouTube channel, you basically show like introduction to survival. Use your car keys to cut wood, and zippers to break, how you could use them to make whatever. But you also show and talk about breaking a piece of wood and using it as like a self defense. Which, when I look at that, I see like the Filipino martial arts, eskrima. Is that something that you picked up through Steven, or something that you kind of, as you adapted to using a broom handle as a self-defense mechanism to kind of grow and learn from that type of martial art?
Yeah, I think so. I always tell people, I think, the way I look at the ninja martial arts, To-Shin Do to be specific, is it is my operating system. If I'm a Mac or if I'm a PC, my operating system is To-Shin Do. Just like in Mac and PC, it might be OS,
Yep.
or it might be Windows or Microsoft. Sorry. So my operating system is Ninjitsu, and then I have different software packages that I have embedded, or downloaded on on my hard drive, right? And so those different systems would be like Kali or Silat or Tamoy or jujitsu or any of these other arts that I've studied, boxing and kickboxing. Um, but now I filter them all through this kind of ninja mindset. And they allow me to do that. So when I'm picking up improvised weapons, I'm improvising as the foundation of improvisation is coming from my ninja training. However, I might throw a little bit of Kali action in there, right? But it's coming. It's just a software, but it's being operated by my by my operating system, which is To-Shin Do. So I'm filtering it all through that, and that's really how I see that. I think the idea of training in other arts gives you a very broad way to look at the world, see what other people are doing, see how they're doing it, see why it works for them, see if there's any value in it for yourself. But you do need to have some sort of strong operating system to work from, or else you just kind of get lost. And I think the thing now is everybody wants to create their own stuff and have their own system, and but yet they don't really have a strong foundation in whatever they were training in,
Right.
and
If
that
there's someone that wants to get into martial arts, but might be intimidated by the fact that this is a lot of time and effort if you want to take this seriously, what's the best step for them besides walking into a taekwondo gym or a jujitsu gym or, hey, Hakeem, I'd love to start teaching, learning under you. Like, what's the first step or steps people should take before they even consider doing a martial art?
Yeah, I think that is so much easier now than it was back in the day. Like there was no internet, so you couldn't just or the
Google
internet
it.
was 1 gig. Your computer was 1 gig, and the internet was AOL, and it was super slow. You know, and then and you had Mosaic, which was like the web
Yes.
browser that became like Google or whatever these other things are. So you had this ability, you didn't have this ability to kind of like dive deep. You had to like go to the library, read a bunch of stuff, or you just walk into a school and just randomly find a school. Now it's too easy and people still don't do it. Do some real damn research, go online, really look at the school, try to see what you feel, watch some YouTube videos, see what you feel makes sense for you in your life and what you're looking for, and then really go out there and see it. There's like a kid walked into my dojo yesterday, and he happened to be downtown. He's here for the summer. He was going downtown for a salsa class, and that was canceled. And he walks by our school and he says, "Oh man, this looks really cool." He's watching a video in the window. He walks in and he's like, "Hey, is there a way I can jump in on a class?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Actually, we got the next class you can jump in." So he was like, "Okay, let me go talk to my ride." So he tells his ride he needs an hour, and he jumps into the next class and he tries it out and he gives it a shot, and then he walks away and he's coming back again to
Oh,
do another class. So it's like it's so easy now for you to just go try it and see if it's what you're looking for. Don't just believe the teacher. I tell people all the time, when you walk into the school, if you walk into my school and you're talking to me, I will say, "Look, I'll answer whatever question you have, but I can tell you anything. But what's really going to matter is if you come and try it out, touch hands with me, and then see whether or not it's
right.
truly what you're looking for." But other than that, I'm just going to tell you a bunch of stuff. Just like any school teacher, you walk in their school, they're going to try to sell you their product. But the reality is what are you emotionally and physically getting out of your training? And is that what you really connect with or not?
In your day-to-day life, and this is from one of our followers, Rebecca, she's kind of wondering, what's like the essential stuff that you carry on you in the event that you have to, say, a car breaks down in the middle of nowhere or you're in an issue? Like, what are some items that you think everyone should carry that doesn't require someone to spend hundreds of dollars on gear, but stuff they carry in their purse and stuff, items like that?
I'm a little bit out of the league now because I do have a lot of stuff. I kind of I kind of carry around with me stuff for all types of eventualities. I think that having a good multi-tool that you carry on you is always a plus. I think that having cordage and duct tape on you is always a plus too, because I like using multi-purpose tools. I also think though that don't get spoiled. Really think through some scenarios in your mind as to how you do. Me and one of my closest friends, he retired a few years ago out of special forces after like 28 years of
Wow.
service, and he and I always debate on the same topic, right? This dude carries a key hidden in his clothes for handcuffs. He's got like wire. He's got lock picks hidden in his collar. He's got a gun on him at all times, and every time we go somewhere, and he's like, "Hey, do you have a gun on you?" And I'm like, no, I didn't wear my gun today. What about your knife? Oh, I don't have my knife. It's in the car. Well, man, you're a sheep. You're not like a sheepdog. And I'm like, well, actually, it's not that I did not think about those things. It's that I have to force my brain to understand what it's like to have to live without
Okay.
those things at times. Because what if you don't have it? If you're always relying on, oh, I have this, I have that, I'll always be this, then life is life. There might be a time that it doesn't work, or you lose it, or you can't get to it, and because you've never thought through what it would be like to not have those items, then you have no answers. The difference in the way I think is, say, let's have answers, let's brainstorm, let's sometimes put ourselves in situations where I go out and I say, man, oh, this guy's getting really aggressive with me, but I don't have my pistol on me. Okay, well, it's cool. That was a good little scenario. What would I have done if X, Y, and Z happened? Or
Right.
if there was like this road rage event, And now I start thinking through processes that will allow me an opportunity to be able to overcome certain scenarios.
And you bring
Your
up a
mind is your greatest tool. It's the one thing you will never be without unless you're dead, right?
right.
So always have some items, but always brainstorm what it's like to have to deal with life without having those items.
And you bring up a good point because obviously you would know and I would know security work. Yeah, I have my CCW and all this stuff, but you go through some state lines, laws change. You can't fly to some countries with your firearm or even
Yep.
die. And so, in those situations, in those areas where I'm going to be, what can I use? What can I do for my training, whatever, and improvise? And I think a lot of people just think, "Oh, I'm going to get the gun and I'm safe." Well, you still have to train with the gun. Can you take
Yep.
apart the gun at night? Can you run through drills? And I think it's so imperative that if you are going to use these items and tools, train with them.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
and people don't people it's easier. Well, it's there's three levels, right? The first level is, one, you have to recognize and believe that things can happen. So I'm gonna prepare. The next level is you have to actually prepare. You have to get some stuff, right? And then the third is that you have to train with it, right? And you have to really put yourself through some paces. And people don't do that. I have personal friends in my life that always talk about survival and being ready and being prepared, and they ask me stuff and I tell them stuff. And for years now, they still don't have the things that I had suggested. Hey, get some water. Make sure you have some water in the house. Oh, okay,
yeah,
yeah, that's easy. And then, yeah, and then 5 years later, they still have no water, and you're like, well, do you believe what I'm saying or do you not? If you truly believe in what you're asking me advice for, if I tell you, then and you say it's easy, then it's nothing for you to go to the store the next time and pick up water,
right.
unless you really, really don't believe in it. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you're still saying, well, you're stuck in that normalcy bias. I'll turn on the sink and the water will come out, and I'll flip the white light switch and the light will come on. So you're still not really preparing yourself properly for that.
Now you've put yourself out there with a couple of books, Modern Hand-to-Hand Combat, Ninja Survival, but you've also put out three kind of training uh, type class things like structures, whether it's the assailant countering tactics, battlefield proximity combat, or hands-on subject strategies. When you put yourself out there like that, how do you deal with people who are like, "Oh, this guy is always talking about," or "I served 1 year longer in the military," or "I know a better martial art." Like when you put yourself out there, it takes courage. I don't care what background you have, you're still putting yourself out there where someone like you, you're not doing this for the ego, you're doing this to save lives. And
Yeah.
but you must also deal with some of these guys and girls who are like, oh. And so where do you get the confidence, or what advice would you give someone who has something they want to share that could save lives but doesn't have the confidence to do it like you did?
Yeah. Um, I look at it. One of the things that I tell people, and this is a little bit interesting. Does a does a lion that's trying to protect its pride care what you know uh, a wild pig thinks about anything? Like it's
Right,
like, I'm trying to grow and protect. When I say my pride or my tribe, I'm talking about everyone,
right.
you know? And so when somebody comes and wants to voice an opinion, if you look at my YouTube channel, there's people all day saying this is BS or that's BS, blah, blah, blah. But they don't have a YouTube channel.
Uh,
They don't have anything. They're just talking. And so yeah, I don't have time for that. And I'll always show compassion to those people, because maybe they need to be acknowledged in their life. And so, but I'm not going to argue with them. So sometimes I'll say, thanks for your feedback,
yeah.
and that's that. I'm going to show you acknowledgement because you're a human being, and it's obviously that's probably what you're looking for. So maybe I'll be the person that turns you around and gives you the acknowledgement that you need, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time arguing with you because you're not part of my mission plan, right?
Right.
It's not my mission to be able to, argue with you about what technique works and what technique doesn't work. It is my mission to go out there and do the good work of growing people and helping them build strong communities and helping them find some level of success in their life. And that's it. And I'm out there every day. Every morning, every evening, every aspect of my life is about improving myself, not in a not to just hold it in and be here in my house. It's improving myself to make sure that those who rely on me or who look to me to help guide them, I'm giving them my best. And the only way I can give them my best is to always be searching and growing in my own way.
Now, before you mentioned your philanthropy work is incredible, from the Spirit Quest to the Soil Foundation. Now, is this something? Obviously, you've had this idea before going naked afraid with the philanthropy and the charity stuff, but how important to you is it to always give back to those that are less fortunate? And your work with underprivileged youth and all these kids and guys and girls, like, where is your legacy to have an impact on these lives? Like, I think I can't think of a better thing for someone to not only give up their time, but their learning and teachings that you have to kind of help these people that are less fortunate than yourself.
Yeah, there's no greater legacy, there's no greater gift than to be able to give back. And so here's what I recognized several years ago, is that when I am about me, I will always end up bumping into an end of the line, right? When I am about others, it is an infinite possibility of being able to grow and me being able to share, because there's an infinite number of people and ways to share and grow them. And so what I found, like a perfect example is in my finances. I used to only be like, man, I need $1 million and I need to do this and I need to do this for me so that I can secure my life. The minute I said, you know what? I want to leave generational wealth. I want to be able to go into a restaurant, see a waiter or a waitress that's trying to do something big with their life and say, I'm going to leave this person $100 and not give a damn that I only spent $5 here. The minute I started thinking about that and wanting to become that, my whole game shifted. I made it to where I was trying to get financially, and now I'm beyond that, because I've raised the bar of where I was going. It was no longer about me. In order for me to help multiple people, then I have to be financially free. I have to be the best that I can be. in a situation where I'm comfortable enough to go out there and reach out to other people. And that forced me to grow bigger than myself. I am no longer about me. I'm about the collective. And because I'm about the collective, it inadvertently makes me strive to be better, which only helps me out. I call it be selfish so that you can be selfless. In the pursuit of being selfless, I have grown myself to a new level, right?
Right.
And so that's what it really is about. I think that's what the rest of my life is going to be about. It's going to be about helping people and empowering people, whether, and giving them whatever knowledge I've gleaned without being judgmental, without saying, well, you don't want to do it my way, so, screw off. It's like, well, this is how it worked for me. And in my life, I deal with this with my younger brother. He's 14 years younger. I said, look, it doesn't always have to be my way or your way. It could be both.
Right.
There's a middle ground. People told me that being a ninja was not going to amount to anything. And I recognize why that makes sense. Because other than Stephen K. Hayes, there wasn't really a lot of successful ninja out there. And a matter of fact, most people still to this day, like I said earlier, don't even know what a ninja is, doesn't know that it really exists. So when I told people that I was going to move to Ohio to become a ninja, people were afraid. Some people thought I was crazy, because to them, there was no outcome that was going to be able to be positive for me, especially my mom. She was like, well, what does that mean? Like, then how do you get a job? Then what do you do for a living? And now I've been able to build such a beautiful life that empowers others, because I was able to pursue that. But nobody saw that coming. It was just, to most people, that's not a viable way to live. But I was able to break that mold. And so I can't always see for like my younger brother what his path is going to be. So I don't say, hey, this was my way and it's the only way that works because I had these experiences. Because the reality is that each person may be the person that breaks the mold. Each person may be the person that changes the game, like a Elon Musk, like a Nikola Tesla. You can't do this, is impossible. This there's no way, there's no outcome that way. No, that's your world, that's your belief, and it may not work out for me in my world, but I also may be the person that breaks it, and the only one who's going to figure that out is me.
The interesting thing, it's funny you brought it up for the whole ninja thing. Growing up, all the Hollywood TV, it was always if you had to be Asian and you had to be throwing ninja stars and running on roofs and fighting Wolverine and all this stuff. So for someone that's ignorant, and I think a lot of this comes from ignorance about the martial arts, it's like, oh, it's an old white guy. What does he know about being a ninja? Or it's a black guy. What, he's not a ninja. It's like you don't understand that they might not look the part of what you think a ninja is, but the philosophies and teachings. A lot of times when I get resumes, and this puts me in a whole tangent, but when I get resumes, people who want to do security, they'll put down, oh, I'm a veteran, but they won't put their skills in there. Like, well, I don't have any skills. I go, well, use the radio, right? You go, you got radio commission skills, you got leadership, you got all this stuff you can pull from something that these people have done and didn't realize it. You're not sure, it's amazing. 5th degree black belt, ninjitsu, who wouldn't want that on the resume? But what you're pulling out of that philosophy or martial art encompasses the rest of your life, whether it's health, your mental health, your physical health, your what you believe in and how you help others. And I think a lot of the ignorance of people is what really kind of pisses me off, that they just look at martial arts like, oh, you're gonna become a ninja in Ohio? Oh, that's so stupid. How about you worry about your life? I'll worry about mine, and we'll meet up in a couple of years. You'll see what I was able to get from the martial art besides throwing a star.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so the martial arts was meant to protect life. And if you look at martial arts in history, the martial arts was birthed from a culture to protect the culture. So being born is almost like if I am a baby born from a mother and a father, then I have all of their DNA kind of makes up my traits. And when I'm raised by them, their characteristics and their mannerisms and their beliefs and their belief system also imprints on who I am. So it only makes sense to help people understand through that process that martial arts is so much more than a kick and a punch, because it was birthed from a culture. It then evolved in that culture, and then it keeps continues to evolve. So what you end up getting is you don't just get a punch chop kick. You end up getting aspects of understanding of mentality and concepts and emotionality and control of my mental faculties. In some places, if you want to go that deep, you can gain aspects of spirituality. And that's because that was part of the people, that was part of the culture. It was a child that was raised in that culture, and it took on a lot of those different aspects. And so when people really look at it from that, then it becomes like, oh, it's not just the punch chop kick, it's all these other things. It's a etiquette, it's a mindset, it's a way to get more connected with the environment. It's all these different levels and all these different things that you learn from martial arts if you're willing to go deep enough.
That's why I think growing up, I had to read The Art of War. Um, but like I read it because this is like really cool samurai, like of the ancient. This is all the stuff. But the quotes that they wrote in that book then are so prevalent today that you don't have to be a martial artist to read that book. I think anyone that wants to have a successful household or business or run a church or run whatever, the teachings from that, like you said, it's all about the philosophy, and it isn't just about the punch a kick. It's to use your mind. And we had Keith Cook on the show a bunch of times, and he got me reading like the readings of Tao. And another thing where I'm kind of like, I had no idea. I just assumed that you had to be a martial artist to kind of read this stuff, but nothing in these books talks about martial arts or samurai or ninjas. Just read what it says. That's your life. That's how you should live your life. And no, it's cool that you talked about that.
And here's why I believe, in my perspective, is that because the lowest common denominator is the human being. The lowest common denominator in anything in this world, for the most part, is the human being. And so, therefore, things that are birthed around the lowest common denominator, which is that human, can speak to any of those humans if that's what they wish to accept or read or intake. And so that's the idea that it's like air, breathing in oxygen is something that every living creature has to do, right?
Right.
And so, and the lowest common denominator in that is life, and so therefore it gets embodied into all of these different life forms. And so that's the same thing with these martial arts and so on and so forth. They speak on so many levels because they were evolved from the lowest common denominator, which is the human experience, the human condition. And because it was birthed out of the human condition, it speaks to the human condition. And that's not just to one culture, that's to the human existence, the human experience. And so anyone who's having a human experience can connect with those if they're willing to get out of their own way, which may in their case be some level of ego or some level of their aspect of belief. If I'm saying, well, I believe the ninja were about spirits and hanging out in the woods or something like that and doing that, and I'm not about that, then okay, then that's your own belief system that's kind of in your ego that's kind of keeping you from seeing how that may connect with you on just a human level,
Right.
and maybe there's another one that does that a little bit more for you.
Now,
So
before I let you go, this has been amazing. But I know you. I think your website's kick ass. It's got literally a breakdown of everything you've done, everything you teach. But if people want to go to your school, check out trainings, obviously your books are on Amazon, social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Do you do any of that? And if people want to reach out, what could they expect coming back from you?
Yeah, so I just launched a website called surviveuniversity.com, not survival, survive. A lot of people get that wrong. Um, Survive University, we're going to release a podcast in 2 weeks,
Awesome.
Survive University podcast, in which we'll talk about different aspects of survival, and that's going to be really cool. They could also get in contact with me on my personal website, which is Hakim-Isler, Isler, and Hakim is spelled Hakim as in Mary. So Hakim-Isler.com. And then, of course, I got my books out there. I got Ninja Wilderness Survival you can get on Amazon. I got Modern Hand-to-Hand Combat you can get on Amazon. And you can get I have some knives out there and things of that nature. I got the Path Seeker, which is made by Double Star, knives. So there's a lot of different ways to get in contact with me or get things that I'm a part of.
That's awesome. It's been awesome having you on here, Akeem. We'll have to do it again. And thank you and stay safe.
All right, thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you liked what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe and see you next week.